set out to make a ping pong paddle, and I thought it would be easier than it actually turned out to be. The part that I thought that was going to be easy was a little bit tricky, and then the part that I thought that was going to be hard really wasn't as hard as I thought it might be. When you think of ping pong paddle, oftentimes you're thinking of one of these guys. These are about $3, $4 at Walmart, real thin, have no padding, straight handle, just your real basic paddle. And this is not what I was using at the time, but it's good to reference off of. What I used to reference off of my paddle was, I first actually just traced what I had on a large piece of paper here, just to get a general reference. These are some of my notes I took about what type of woods you use inside of a paddle. Some people use cypress, balsa, poplar, basswood for the cores. The cores, they usually want to be a little bit softer. Most of these woods have hardness scales under 500 or around there. And then on the outside of the paddles, they use an outer ply, which is of a hardwood, that are usually closer to about 1,000 on the hardness scale. Then you have to worry about thickness. Some paddles are thicker than others, and some are thinner than others. So the mean average I thought that most paddles were about 5.5 millimeters. Of course, everything's in decimals of inches or fractions of inches or decimals of millimeters. So I was trying to correlate different thicknesses to one another, and it was kind of crazy because then you're worrying about how thick a 1/16 inch veneer is in millimeters, and you're doing a lot of just back and forth of units, which came to be a little bit of a pain. And first attempt, let me just explain, was this guy. It was going to look awesome, right? It had this sweet grain on it, and this was this nice striping figured, I don't know, maple or something. I got a variety pack of veneers, and these are the two ones that I really liked, and so I put them together, and then it never laid out flat. I really thought the easy part of making the ping pong paddle was going to be just gluing it up, making it flat, and then the hard part would be the handle. No, actually it was the opposite. Another thing is, I used regular wood glue on this one, which I don't think is a good idea. I don't think it has the stiffness that you need. I forget whether I used type 1 or type 2 for type bond glues. I want to say I used 3 because I thought that would be stronger, but it just didn't work. The other problem I had was I glued it down to my table saw because that was a nice flat reference, but it's a metal table saw, and in my shop here it's not heated really too well. It's in the basement and it stays about 50 to 60 degrees, and that metal was just staying so cold, and I don't think it allowed the glue to fully cure very well by the time I took it out. I left it in there for a good 24 hours or so, and usually that's plenty. And you can also see I put it on some paper so I didn't get any moisture on my steel top of my table saw. And when I peeled it all apart, it came off with the wood, and it was just complete failure. So that was a little upsetting because every time you glue something up, you wait a day and then you lose a day in your project. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but a little learning curve there. This one I actually did, I used balsa wood for the core, and then I used 3 layers of 32nd inch veneer with it, I believe. It doesn't give you an exact thickness, but it's probably about a 32nd of an inch or maybe a little bit thinner. So I had 3 pieces of veneer on each side with about an 1/8 inch balsa core in the middle. The other part about making those cores is my planer only goes down to about 3/16 to 1/4 of an inch, and I can't get these really thin veneers. So what I ended up doing actually was putting 2 pieces together and kind of taping them together and putting it in, so I could get them actually down to 1/8 of an inch, which was helpful. But I ended up actually buying some, not veneer, but just 16th inch walnut pseudo veneers. I guess they're a little bit thick to be called a veneer. on Amazon actually, and they, for the most part, are pretty good when you're gluing them up. They have a little wave to them, but once you clamp them down, they're okay. And that's what I actually ended up using on my paddle. So that was glue up number one. I was bummed I didn't get to use that, but I learned a lesson. Then I tried to do, I used these guys, and then I put it together. You can see how wavy this guy is. This guy's nowhere close to being straight. I thought my problem was that the veneers were so thin they didn't have any rigidity. Now that it's cured, it's a little bit tighter there, but you can still bend it. This way it's really nice because all the wood grain's going in that direction. But I thought the veneer was too thin, that it just lacked all of its actual structure rigidity of the wood itself. So what I attempted to do was I was going to make a poplar core, and then I put about a strong 16th of an inch piece of the thicker walnut on either side. I have since planed this down just because I was playing with it, and it's, you know, warped even more. You can tell that that's, you know, it should be like one of those wind spindle things. And it was good for a day and a half, and I almost thought about putting the handle on, and then I was like, I don't think this is actually flat anymore. So I decided not to do that, and I'm so glad I did, because you can't play ping pong with a blade that's not flat. So, and I did use the wood glue again on this one, and I was just kind of confused. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And I even, that's the other thing, I used a solid piece of poplar that did have the growth rings kind of closer to the center, so of course that's gonna, you know, want to warp a little bit. And then I tried varying the grains of the walnut, so I varied it this way, and then on the other side I kind of crossed them, so this one's going that way. So I had like this crisscross, and then the poplar is going this way. I thought that would be good, but that kind of just all warped it too, so that one was no good. Okay, so what I actually ended up doing, okay, here's my actual paddle here. Okay, I'll show you some close-ups. What I did was I did the poplar again, but I cut it in strips. So I cut out that closest to the pith part and got more of the straight grained, and I did 4 thinner strips, and then glued those all together. So I have more of like a laminate of that. So, and I crisscrossed all the grain pattern, so if it's going to warp, it's going to be minimal. And then I used a sheet of this going in the long or the short way. So I have my main grain going this way, and then my 2 kind of 16th inch plies going this way on either side. So I was trying to help it from warping this way since my grain was going this way. So far actually so good with that. But the big thing is that I corrected when I was doing it was I used a 2-part epoxy as opposed to wood glue, which dries a lot more brittle, and it doesn't have as much give to it. And I think that's what really helped me get the best result. What I did actually first was I got a template online. Ross Lady has some sweet looking custom ping pong paddles. You can check him out. But he also has templates of his just different styles, straight handles, curved, and then different actual blade shapes. But this is kind of the standard one with the flared handle. That's the one I use right now and seemed the nicest. So I went with that. So what I did with this outline was that I adhered it to a piece of 1/2 inch MDF. So I got that there. I cut it out on the scroll saw as close to the line as I could, and then I took it to the spindle sander and I sanded it down kind of flush to the edge. I still have yet to, get 100% perfect edge using a spindle sander and cutting it out like this, but you get pretty darn close. And then I had to use a separate sheet. I cut out just the handle here with a little bit of an extension on it. I put that on here, And then I cut this out for my handle when I was cutting out the handle pieces, because you can't just put the handle wood on there and then just route it, flush trim it to the actual piece here, because it extends all the way up into that area. So you have to be able to have a template that extends all the way into that spot and then some to be able to get into that area before you put the piece on. I did drill these holes here for just reference. That was when I was routing, just so it wouldn't move at all, just in case the double-sided tape would, move a little bit, but it was okay. So this is kind of the heart and soul. Once I have this done, then I can make more of them a little bit easier, and it's not too bad. So for my actual handle, I used Bacote and some Red Heart. I chose the Red Heart because I believe that to be the red wood that fades the least. Like Padauk would really get just brown over the year, and I think this one holds its color a little bit better. I might be wrong. I didn't do that much research on it when I was looking at the store, and it looked nice and it was good contrast. Bacote is a very heavy wood, so my paddle is heavier. I'll put down what the actual weight is. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I think a normal paddle is like 170 with rubber grams, 170 grams. And then my paddle was about 212, I think, or something like that. So it is a little on the heavier side, but it makes it feel a little bit more substantial. You do notice it a little bit, but once you start using it, it's not that bad. I'm not playing professional ping pong. Play pretty well, but I'm not competing, so it's not like it's that big of a deal. All right. For me, it's worth the sacrifice to have my own nice little paddle than being 100% accurate to weight. And if I make another one, I might go a little bit lighter. I might hollow out some of these handle pieces here. But what I did for the handles was I cut off chunks from these larger pieces here. Got it into, I think it's a 3/8 inch thickness here. Let me just see. It's about 1/4 inch. Not sure why it's a little strong. And then what I did was I put these and I connected it to my template for my handle. I put that down there, double-sided taped it, and then I routed flush trim to that. And then once I got this piece looking like this, then I did a round over onto this edge here. And then that's what gave me this actual contour here. And then once I had that, the little flare that you see kind of on the handle here that has the kind of connection of the handle to the rubber area, which is right there, you can see. I did that on the spindle sander. I was kind of holding it, propping it up so it was level, and just took it in. I did do reference lines on the top and on the side. So I put a reference here and then on the edge, and then I just kind of ground down until I got to both of those lines with one nice curve there. And that turned out really nice, actually. I'm pretty happy with that. And then I think I just glued this on with Type 3 wood glue, so it wouldn't matter if I sweated or anything like that. The end of the handle there is a little squarish. I think I just have a 1/4 inch round over. And it's a little bit thicker, but I kind of like it. Feels good. One other thing, when you do hit this with a ping pong ball, it does sound a little kind of hollow or twonky, but it hits well, and it hits pretty consistent over the whole paddle. It's a very soft feel. I think if I did, because it's only ended up being 3 plies, if I did more plies, it would be a firmer, harder feel. But I can experiment with that a little bit later. I put on the Flexera butterfly rubber, which was the rubber I was using on the other paddle I liked, so I had used it before, and little did I know that that's like the cheapest rubber, and it's, you know, still 20 bucks a side. I mean, you can spend $80 on a side of rubber, which blew my mind, but hey, more power to you. And yeah, I really like it. It plays pretty well. I think there's some things I could make a little bit better. When I was cutting out the rubber from the sheets that you get, I was thinking, how in the world can I make this so it's, you know, perfectly flush? Because everyone has trouble, you know, cutting their rubbers and putting them on there 100%. So I did a little test piece here. I put it on a piece of MDF, and then I used a flush trim router bit to try and get a nice clean edge. But it just didn't work nice enough there. It kind of shredded it, kind of made it look faded. It wasn't a slice, it was more of like a rip. So I just wasn't happy with it. Although it's, you know, flat and it's okay, it just looks like something just ate it up. So I just did the old method where I traced it and then cut it out with scissors, and that seemed to be fine to me. It's a pretty good edge overall. And I just kind of like how it looks with the rubber and the foam and then the 3 plies. It's kind of a nice contrast there. And I'm really happy with how the handle, because basically the only thing that you're going to do that actually looks cool is the handle, because the blade itself is going to be mostly covered. Yeah, the coat looked pretty sweet. Pretty happy with that, and the red heart contrast there, pretty cool. So that's basically the gist of how I did it. I think I filled you in on anything. If you have any comments or anything about what I did on my paddle, or what you're planning on do, by all means, it's not the best way or the only way to do it. Just the way I figured out how to do it and kept my paddle from, you know, looking like that. So yeah, if you have any other experiences, let me know in the comment section. And then I'll show you some glamour shots. Thanks for watching.